Hello FlossTube, and welcome back to the second in my series of Stitchquilt finishing tutorials. So the last time I showed you how to make the basic hexagon like this with the fabric back and all around the edge so it's fully finished in and of itself. All the tutorials I'll be doing from now on assume that you already know how to do that. Okay, and we're going to start with usually finished ones of these, and then I'm going to show you how you can make them into different things. So today we're starting with one finished stitch quilt piece, and we're going to make a little needle book from it. Okay, so I've got Dandelion, which just came out today as I'm filming. I love Dandelion. Let me just hold that. Hopefully you can see it. I'm sorry the lighting is again rubbish. I fundamentally don't have good lighting, and let's see if we can get that. Yeah, more or less all in the same light. There you go. Anyway, so there's Dandelion, and it's completely finished front and back. And we're going to make it, like I say, into a little needlebook. Now, let me just show you what I'm going to use. I'm going to be using a scrap of this. This is quilt wadding. It's what's called low loft quilt wadding. It's usually cotton or bamboo. Wadding will come in this form. I brought just to show you, this is what you get if you're doing polyester wadding. Okay, and I don't know if you can see that there's a good thickness to it. I think this is 1/2 inch. You can also get even thicker. And obviously it presses down when you sew through it. If you're doing machine quilting particularly, you can end up with a nice thin loft to it. But it's quite different, particularly these small things, where I think I talked about this last time. We're not doing any actual quilting. You can sew a line around if you want, but it will give quite a lot of thickness, particularly in the center of your piece. So I'm not going to be using that, but you could use that, and particularly for the needlebook, actually, you could use that. So like I say, I'm going to be using this. This is quilt wadding, and I'm actually going to use this as the finished surface for the needlebook. It also works really well. Sorry, the shadows are so distracting, aren't they? I really wish I could do this better. Anyway, keep going. It works really well as a thread bed. I've just had to spend quite an amount of time picking off enormous amounts of thread which had attached itself to my leftover piece of quilt wadding. So you could make it that. Obviously it's quite small, but just, you know, for 1 or 2 pieces in there, it would work really nicely. It's very sticky. I mean, it's not sticky, but you know, it's got lots of static on it that will hold really well. But it'll also be really nice for putting your needle through. And you can see I've already cut mine into the hexagon shape. Okay, so I'm not using my hexiform for this. You could add in a layer of hexiform if you wanted, but you don't need to, and I'm not going to. So I've cut that, but I've also cut a second piece, also in a hexagon, but I just cut, in fact, I cut it to the same template, and then I cut an extra centimetre or so all the way around. And we're going to use that upside down, just to give a little bit of extra thickness in the middle of our needlebook. Okay, so that's what we're using. I've got a 5-inch square of fabric, just as before. And in essence, we're going to make the back of our needlebook exactly like any other stitch quilt hexagon. So right side down, put the hexagon on top. Okay, and we're going to start folding and clipping. I'm less worried about this one slightly slipping. When I was doing the example last week, I can't remember, I think I was using a piece that had checks or stripes on it or something like that, and it really, I wanted to get it straight. This one with the floral print matters slightly less. Oh, I haven't done the cutting round. I will do the cutting round. I'm going to do it fairly by eye. I would not recommend you do it by eye if you're making a bigger piece where you're stitching hexagons together, but we're not doing that today. So I'm just going to cut the corners off basically so that there's a bit less fabric to deal with. Measure yours properly. That's what I'm going to say. Don't do what I do. Do what I say. Measure yours properly. Anyway, so fold it, clip. You remember how you do this. If you don't remember, you need to go and watch the first tutorial. Fold and fold, clip at the corner, fold and fold, clip at the corner. I'm not going to make you watch me sewing all of this round, but I am just going to talk a little bit about one other thing we want to do while we are sewing this on, because we want a way, well, I want a way of fastening my needle book. So I'm going to put on a little bit of a tie front and back. So we'll have different ways of attaching these to the front and the back, and I do want to talk to you about that. So there we go. Let's just get that last one in. Oh, I seem to have stopped clipping the corners. Clip the corners. That's the bit you want to stay. Clip the corners. And then on the last one, untuck it, fold it, refold it. There we go. That'll do. Okay, now I have got this little piece of lovely crochet lace. Any piece of small, narrow ribbon trim would be fine for this, whatever you've got you want to use. It's the kind of thing I often save from packaging. Fancy packaging comes with a little bit of ribbon. It's too short for a lot of things, but perfect for something like this. So I'm going to want, I don't know how long that is. I'm going to say 6 inches. You could add longer. In fact, I'm going to cut it a bit longer. Let's say 8 inches, and you'll need 2 pieces that length. Okay, one will attach to the front, and obviously one we're going to attach to the back. And we're going to attach it, our needle book is going to open top to bottom like that. So I'm going to attach it on what will be the bottom part of this. Now, mine is not directional, it really doesn't matter. But if you've got fabric that is directional, make sure this is the top, this is the bottom. And then we're going to take our piece of trim or ribbon or whatever you've got, and I'm just going to tuck it under that side. When I am sewing, I can sew it in. Okay, so we're then just going to sew it round just the same as you did for your plain hexiform your plain Stitchquilt hexagon standard finishing. Okay, this week I'm treating you. I've got some actual sewing thread. I know, wonders will never cease. I went out, it's sunny today, I went out, I picked up a roll of thread. It's slightly grey, which is probably not absolutely ideal for this, but it'll be fine. Let's just get, that's a little bit off the edge of the fabric. So we're going to do just like we did before. I'm going to start by putting it through my wadding, and I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to start on the side with the actual trim. You don't have to do that, but since I want to show you that first, I'm going to do that. So pull it through, leave the end hidden inside. Okay, so you have a little knot, and we'll deal with that bit right at the end. Tiny stitch into the wadding, but not through the backing fabric. Okay, and then come along. Okay, now making sure I'm holding my trim exactly where I want it. And this time I'm going to stitch into the trim, take it back through the wadding and up into the fabric. So I'm catching all those layers, but I'm still not going through right to the back. Okay, and I'm going to go all the way across. And then, because this is the part where it will have the most wear, potentially, well, this and the hinge, which we'll do in a bit, I'm going to go back the same bit. So down, up, down, sort of doing my stitches in between, halfway between the ones I did on my first run across. And then back for the third and final time, so that should be really fairly firmly in place. And having more stitches and your thread going in different directions, all of that makes that quite a lot firmer, and I'm tugging that quite hard and it's not going anywhere. Okay, so I finished stitching this one all the way around. I've got my tie, it's all there. Obviously this is going to be the outside, this is going to be the inside. On the dandelion, also, it's not that way, it's that way, thank you. Just checking, we're all paying attention. Dandelion, I want this to be on the outside. Now, if you'd planned in advance, you could obviously do exactly the same technique and have your tie come out under here. I haven't planned it, but I'm also not sure that's what I really want. I quite want my tie, both of them to be on the inside. So I'm going to show you how I will add that on the inside. Okay, so making sure I'm on the bottom, making sure you do that before you do anything else. Then what I want to do is just fold the end of that over and pin it in place. It's a little bit easier with a ribbon where you haven't got holes all the way through the thing. But anyway, you can pin that in place. And then we're going to sew it. And what I want to do is I'm going to sew essentially a little rectangle around the end, down the side, so it comes below where the raw edge is, across and back up. Okay, so that I'm encapsulating all of the raw edge underneath. I don't think that's quite in the middle. Let's move that a bit better. Okay, with this, like I say, with the crochet, it's a little bit tricky. The ends do sort of go all over the place, but you can take your time and just make sure you tuck in all the raw edge and all the loose ends underneath where you are sewing. Okay, and again, what's really nice about having a layered piece that you're working with, you can always do the same trick, front or back, little knot in your thread, which I now can't tie, there we go, little knot in your thread, come in a little way away, don't go all the way through, but you can go into the hexiform, I can sort of feel that, or the wadding, or whatever you're using, and bring it up where you want to start sewing. Pull it, there we go, so you're leaving an end out, and we'll deal with that right at the end. So we're going to use the same applique stitch, small stitch straight down in front of where your thread comes out, bring it up through the ribbon. Oh, this thread keeps going into knots. Okay, so a little tiny stitch straight down, needle under the fabric. Okay, we're hiding as much of the stitch as we possibly can underneath. I mean, it's on the inside, but you know, this is a needle book. We will see the inside, so you want it to be neat. I was thinking if you were a super kind person with time on their hands, these would make a really sweet table gift at a retreat. The stitching is not massive. You could choose one of the charts that's got least stitching of all. Or if you know who your table mates are likely to be, you could stitch the ones with their initials. And I think that would make a super sweet table gift. I'm very lucky. The last couple of years on my table at Stitch in London, I've been on a table with a wonderful lady called Leanne, who's an amazing sewer and quilter, and she has made us fabulous table gifts. The first year it was a kind of card holder, and then last year it was a lanyard holder, and she brought all the kit for us to put our own names in the lanyard with stitching, and it was so lovely. And if you're the sort of person that looks at that and thinks, yeah, but I'm not that good friends with my sewing machine, Stitchy Rach, I'm looking at you. Obviously, table gifts always optional, and they don't have to be handmade. They absolutely don't, and they don't have to be expensive either. But if you think, I'd love to be able to give someone something, but I don't think I could do that, this is something you definitely can do. It's not hard. It's not a lot of stitching. It's not enormous amounts of finishing. I mean, you know, you want to start more than the night before. I say you probably want to start more than a week before, but you know, you can do it. So that's all it takes, just to put that little ribbon on. And again, remember, you pull the thread up, push the fabric down with your scissors and snip, and your end will just disappear like magic. So now I've got a front and a back. I think that looks quite sweet. with the trim coming out, so I'll be able to tie that to hold it down. This is where my needles will be. And so what I need is a hinge. So I need to sew across here. And I am just going to sew. I think if you thought it was going to get enormous amounts of wear and tear, there are other ways you could do it that would be a little bit more secure. But we are just going to sew it, but we're going to sew it as firmly as we can. So we're going to tie our knot, hide the end of our thread, and I'm going to put that into the wadding side and come up at the corner. Okay, and then I'm holding them together as they will be in the finished thing. We're not doing any inside out sewing here. I'm going to hold them together. I'm going to line up my corners. You could clip it if you want to, but you don't really need to at this point. Okay, and I'm going to make sure right on the corner I'm putting in a couple of stitches, and I'm not going to worry if you see those stitches a bit. You're going to see all of these stitches, frankly, and that's okay. If you want to do a whip stitch, this is where you can do a whip stitch. I'm not going to do a whip stitch, but you definitely could, and it would be a reasonable place to do it. So I'm going to do a mattress stitch. It's similar to the applique stitch, but just slightly different. So I'm putting it in from back to front and under, front to back and under. I think it's, some people would call this the ladder stitch. I think it is the same as the mattress stitch. I don't know. Anyway, if you're worried about the name, you can go and look it up. Okay, but front to back, and I'm taking quite small stitches. And just as we did when we were attaching the ribbon on the first piece, we are going to go backwards as well along here. And again, that just gives us 2 lots of stitching in both directions, a little bit more stability, more stitches to hold it firm. But as you can see, it does not take very long. Even if you're slower than me, it does not take very long. Okay, so we're just going to go front to back, not front to back, right to left, and then I'm going to go left to right. When I get to the corner, once again, I'm going to make sure I go all the way to the corner, and I'm going to stitch 3 small stitches really to hold that very tight. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it around because it's easier if you're right-handed to stitch from right to left. If you're left-handed and you want to stitch from left to right, you go right ahead and do that. Go left ahead and do that. Okay. And you can just about see the stitching. You can't see loads, and it'll be fine. But with this, much more important that it's secure than that your stitching is completely hidden. Okay. You want to try and get your stitches relatively even in length. I say that just as I notice I'm completely failing to get mine even in length. You can take longer over this if you want. It's fine. But do you see, I mean, it really is just simple stitching. This is basically not more difficult than a running stitch. Running stitch on the front, running stitch on the back is essentially what you're doing. Running stitch on the front, running stitch on your back. A thing that would be fun to do, but I'm not going to do on this because I've only just thought of it, you could do a decorative cross stitch across here. I would do the running stitch or the whip stitch as well, so that you've got something really secure to hold it. But a decorative cross stitch might also be quite fun. And we get to the end, and again I'm going to do 3 little stitches, and on my last one I'm going to come to the inside, take my thread through into here and trim it off. And that's it. That is really it. This is not a hard project, but it's a super cute finish for you. Could go, you know, in a lovely special sewing kit. Like I say, table gift for a friend. Table gift for a friend with their initial on it would look cute. Whatever you want, really. Okay, and there's my dandelion needle case. And then I just undo my bow, and I'm going to put some needles in it. There we go. Easy. Okay, the needles don't have to come through to the back because we've got enough wadding in there to make that work on their own. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you look forward to the next stitch quilt tutorial. I think I said I was going to do ornament next, so I will do ornament next, and then we'll move on to some of the bigger projects that I have in mind when more of the charts are available. Thanks so much for watching. Happy stitching.